Hear that noise, so just bear with it. They're excited about expanding their space, so I figure we can put up with it. I mean, most of us in here have been putting up with noise from kids.
We put up with you. We can put up with that.
Wide open.
Didn't he? He opened the door. I had to walk in.
So you want to talk about throwing down the gauntlet? Okay. As they like to say, challenge accepted. All right. Well, we're going to finish up now. I did not prepare any other scriptures, so we're gonna finish out chapter 20. No, hang on a minute. I forgot where I was. Yeah, we're gonna finish out chapter 20. But our study is that where we were? 19?
I think we're not 19.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
19. I didn't
So-
bring that notebook.
I'm going to pick it up one more time. If it falls down there, it's going to stay down there, right?
Jennifer will pick it up on
Because I read in Proverbs where, if you try to correct a stubborn person, you're going to have to do it again and again. All right. So, yeah, okay, we're going to finish out chapter 19. And I think I actually get one or two verses into 20. So, but we're going to finish out this set. Now remember, excuse me, this set that we're looking at was, we've gone through up to 19 chapters in Proverbs, and hang on, coffee there, but I'll kick this leg out just a little bit.
Why does that say 1822?
I just grabbed that slide to stick up there.
Oh, okay.
Because I stopped right in the middle last week. So, but what we've learned is that the Proverbs aren't just a complete collection of single verses, which is the way I had read them for most of my adult life. It's like, okay, it's just this verse, it's just this verse. I failed to see the connections. But there, when you actually sit down and do a study of Proverbs, what you learn is that they're all interconnected. They're thematic. There are themes and some thinking that goes behind it until you get to chapter 19. And then we have a collection of individual proverbs, but there are still, in that 20 verse set, there are still various proverbs that cover the same ground. What I've done in this lesson is I have gone through starting in 19:4 or 19:5 and working through 24. I've collected those proverbs that have that same idea behind them, and I'm going to read them instead of reading them like you would normally read Proverbs, verse after verse after verse, and going, wait, he's here, then he's there, then he's over here, then he's over there. We're going to put them together, and we've been discussing themes, okay? And some of our themes, right, we had the problems of the poor. We had several proverbs down through this set as family or family-oriented proverbs. And so now we're going to look at the proverbs. It helps to turn it on. Yeah, there ain't nothing like having power. We're going to look at the proverbs in this set that deal with wisdom or learning or education, okay? And it's really strange. I had occasion at work last week we read the proverb about not correcting the stubborn or the arrogant person, because if you do, they'll never learn. You'll have to do it again, right? And at work, this week at work, I was discussing with another person, and we were talking about a problem, and that very proverb came up, and I actually got to use that in a real life application, and I was like, oh, I just read this in Proverbs, And I told him, I said, hey, look, when you try to correct, the stubborn or the ill-tempered person, right? A, they're not going to learn, and B, you're going to end up there again. So better just to pull back and let them hit the wall and just sweep up the pieces, right? So again, I've got these scriptures. Let me pull them up. So I've got these scriptures that we pulled out of 19 and 20. But please note that I'm not going to read 19 verses 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got the numbers up here. See, there's 2, 3, 8, 11, 16, 19. So just like we were doing last week, I'm pulling the verses out of this chapter or out of this verse set that deal with wisdom, learning, and education. So instead of reading something about wisdom and then something about family and then something about poor and then something about lazy and then something about this, something about that, we're reading all of the same themes together so that we can get a better understanding of what Proverbs is trying to teach us. So, reading them all together. So here we go. Chapter 19, verse 2. Enthusiasm without knowledge is no good. Brings no profit. Okay? Haste makes mistakes. Where have we heard that before? Right? Haste makes waste. That's where this comes from. Verse 3. People ruin their lives by their own foolishness and then are angry at the Lord. And there's a whole lesson right there. Verse 8. We're going to skip to verse 8. If you're following in your analog Bible, you're going to have to skip down. If you're on your digital, you're going to have to swing up. Or you could just read the screen now where Carol is standing. And that was a Let's Make a Deal reference. I'm sorry. Am I too old? Nobody else remembers Let's Make a Deal? No? Okay. You can stop right now. Mr. I was 4. I don't want to hear it. No, not another word. Not from you. No. Okay. So, verse 8, to acquire wisdom is to love yourself. Now that's an idea that bears a little bit more thought. To acquire wisdom is to love yourself. People who cherish understanding will prosper. Sensible people control their temper. They earn respect by overlooking wrongs. Keep the commandments, verse 16. Keep the commandments and keep your life. Despising them leads to death. If anybody ever asks you what good the Old Testament commandments are, what good are the commandments of God, right? Well, there you go, right there. If you ignore them long enough, it'll kill you. And I don't mean that just spiritually either. Here we go. This is what I was just talking about. Verse 19. Hot-tempered people must pay the penalty. If you rescue them once, you will have to do it again. Right? They don't learn their lesson. Verse 20. Get all the advice and instruction you can so you will be wise for the rest of your life. Verse 21. You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. So yeah, and we have kind of an alternate saying for that, right? Life happened while I was making other plans. I mean, have you ever heard that or even used that? Life happens when you're making other plans. Well, that's kind of what this is talking about. You can make your plans, but His purpose is going to be brought to bear. Verse 23, fear of the Lord leads to life, bringing security and protection from harm. Verse 25, if you punish a mocker, the simple-minded will learn a lesson. If you correct the wise, they will be all the wiser. Verse 27, if you stop listening to instruction, my child, you will turn your back on knowledge. Now, keep in mind what we just read. We're going to cover this in a little bit more detail, but keep in mind what we just read about people who love wisdom or seek after wisdom love themselves. If you turn your back on knowledge, who are you really hating?
Yourself.
Thank you.
I didn't want you to fall over.
Thank you. I was leaning hard. All right, and then chapter 20, verse 1. Wine produces mockers. Alcohol leads to brawls. Those who led astray by drink cannot be wise. Avoiding a fight. Verse 3 of chapter 20. Avoiding a fight is a mark of honor. Only fools insist on quarreling. Man, I am having all kinds of trouble this evening. Okay, so let's get started and let's look at these verses here. So, and when we read verse 2, enthusiasm without knowledge is no good. That's the way the verse reads. And the word enthusiasm in verse 2, if you really look at it, King James here actually uses the word, it's better translated as soul, or the soul of a person. Okay, the word enthusiasm is energy. It is it's like the life energy or the life substance of a person or the soul. Okay, so when it says enthusiasm without knowledge is no good, what it really is saying is the soul or the person without knowledge is not good. Why? Why is that? Well, it clears that up for us. Haste makes mistakes. Okay? And so we can understand that the enthusiastic soul, when the energy of a person is led to take action before full thought or wisdom can be applied, right? What happens? How many of y'all, show of hands, don't be bashful, the camera's pointing this way, okay? How many of y'all have ever embarked on a course of action only to find that you didn't know enough to really carry it out, right? You got into it and it was like, oh my God, if I had known then what I know now, right, I'd have paid for it. I'd paid for it to be done. I'd have hired somebody.
Don says, now you tell me.
Yeah, now you tell me. I was busy looking back there at Hunter. Hunter had the look on his face like, what, who, me?
Totally him.
We have a tendency to go quickly. In the New Testament, scriptures would encourage us, especially pastors, right? And that's where this is going. To lay hands suddenly on no man, right? Watch, be wary, don't move quickly, right?
I've made that error before.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did, and I'm glad I was able to learn before you. No, I'm teasing, but that's the reason. You know, come on in, bro.
Hey.
We were just talking about you.
Well, I bet.
We were actually talking about Hunter and not.
Fill it in for you.
Yeah, he tried to throw you under the bus, but we said no, we understand. We know what's going on. So, but the haste makes mistakes, right? When we leap without looking, right? When we take action without having knowledge, right? This is not always a good thing. Now, sometimes it works out for us, but the chances are that we're going we're going to have to fix things that we normally wouldn't have to fix if we just slowed down and taken a little time and gotten some wisdom. And we actually have that verse down in here a little bit about get wisdom, right? Before you take action, get wisdom. Okay? When we talk about action without education not being a good thing, you can think of two things, right? Think of, we use the word intelligence, right? What does intelligence mean?
Smart.
Smart?
You know things.
Intellectual capacity to learn.
Intellectual capacity. Intelligence is the knowing of things. What are you pointing at, bro? Did I misspell a word?
No, I was about to say the way you were using it, it was more of gathering information.
Right. Intelligence, however you use it, is the knowing of a thing.
Knowledge.
Right? If a person is said to have intelligence, it generally refers to the fact that they are capable of learning, knowing a thing. Okay? So we say, oh, this is a very intelligent person. This is a person who knows a thing or knows things or is capable of learning or knowing those things.
Wisdom is the proper application of that knowledge.
Wisdom is application, exactly.
Proper application.
Proper application.
So you can apply it and it not be proper.
And not be proper, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So one of the things. Somebody's peeking in the door. One of the things that we can take from intelligence, right? Before the police or the military will take an action, they want to know as much as they can about the situation. So they'll say, we are gathering intelligence. What are they doing? They're learning. They're getting information so they can know a thing, right? They want to know. I don't want to kick the door down, right, and run. How many of y'all ever saw Star Wars? Right? I got a little hand in the back. He said, oh, finally, a question I can answer. Right? So in the original movie, right, Han Solo goes running down the hallway, chasing 4 or 5 stormtroopers, right? And he goes running around the corner. And then a split second later, he comes running back around the corner, and there's like a whole platoon after him, right? He took off after him without knowing what was down at the other end of the hallway.
That's a lack of wisdom.
That's a lack of knowing. That's a lack of wisdom. That's a lack of a lot of stuff, right? Wisdom says don't go before you know, right? Also, think about due diligence. How many of y'all have ever heard the term due diligence? Do your due diligence. What does that mean? It means learn as much as you can. Know as much as you can before what? You take action. Right? So once upon a time,
Your head cold?
once upon a time,
You know I got to.
once upon a time, a friend of mine and myself talked about going into business, right? And so we talked about buying a business. So one of the things that we insisted on was the phrase due diligence, right? And the more we found a little business and we started to investigate, well, the more we investigated, the less attractive that business looked to us. And we ended up not buying it, which I think was a good decision. But rather than buy it first and then figure out later that it had all its problems, due diligence, the active gathering of knowledge.
We started at 7 o'clock around here.
Don't make me separate y'all. I mean, I will separate y'all.
Go ahead.
I'll go boy, girl, boy, girl. No, that
Back
won't
to
work.
the house.
I'll go boy, chair, girl, boy, chair, girl. Okay. So verse 2 is basically telling us that, we may be passionate about something, but don't let it drive us to action before we actually know what's going on, what we're doing, right? Verse 3, let me read that again. Verse 3 is an irony, right? People ruin their lives by their own foolishness, and then they're angry at the Lord, right? They blame God for their condition, their lot in life, and their lot in life is directly related to the decisions that they have made. Right? And they're blaming God. God, you've done this to me. And God's like, I didn't done nothing. You didn't ask me before you went. B, you didn't ask me while you were there. And C, you never talked to me. Right? But this is just looking at that situation, right? A lot of people will blame God for the condition that they find themselves in. Wisdom understands. Oh, okay. Barbie came in. I was just going to see where she's going to sit. Oh, okay. So see, she was a perfect example of what we were just talking about. She entered the room,
Did her due diligence,
gathered intelligence, saw where her husband was sitting, and made the decision.
All husbands, take note.
Yes, all husbands take note. Right? And then went and sat next to him, thus ending all speculation and any rumor that might have been about to get started. I don't know what those rumors were because I never listened to them. I said, maybe I start a few, but I never listened. Okay. All right. So wisdom understands the difference between God's testing and the receiving of the consequences of our actions. Wisdom understands that difference. Okay? So a lot of times we go through trial and tribulation, right? Why? We either are reaping what we've sown, the consequences of our own actions, or God has intentionally brought a trial to us to test us or to provide example to those watching us. Okay?
I found beans. Sorry.
could also be for our.
Do you want to move down to the end of the table?
Curiosity got the cat.
Oh, okay.
It could be for our growth and our maturation to mature us.
Right. God's testing, right? So remember Job. Who could forget?
Job.
9 months.
Was it that long?
You're not gonna. That one I was gonna give you.
We studied him long enough.
We ought not to forget him. Okay, I knew there was one over there. Okay, so remember at the very beginning of Job, why did Job suffer through all the misery he suffered through?
It was a test, wasn't it? A
I always
challenge.
use him as an example.
It was a challenge. That's the right word.
The Lord
It wasn't a test for Job as much as it was a challenge from Satan.
Right.
Okay? God was proving a point. And the point that he was proving is my people love me for me, not because of what I give them or don't allow to happen to them. They love me to love me, right? Their faith transcends the conditions in their lives. Now, having said that, if I read to you this verse and I say, people ruin their lives by their own foolishness and are angry to the Lord, what can we say about that person who is angry at the Lord for the condition of their life?
They just don't believe in him.
They don't believe. There's no love of God there. Right?
Right.
There's no faith there. So they blame God. I knew a guy one time, and he was angry at God. And it was easy for him to be angry at God because he had no faith. Right? And so it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. God never helps me, therefore I am angry at him, and that's why I don't have faith in him, which is why he never helps me, which is why. And so it's just this vicious circle. So we learn a lot about people, by understanding this proverb. Anger at God is usually because they either don't understand God or because they think God needs to bail them out of something they've gotten themselves into, but they don't want to surrender their lives to Him. Okay?
Admit they were wrong.
Huh?
Or admit they were wrong.
Yeah, or admit that they were wrong. Sometimes So have you ever been in a bless you?
Oh, thanks.
Have you ever been in a situation in life where you just feel like everything is against you? Right? I mean, everything is going wrong. To the point where you if you don't actually, you want to look heavenward and say, why me? Okay? Right? So one of the things that I would challenge you is the next time you feel this way, check yourself and say, why did I assume this is about me? Why do I assume that this is about me? It might be because of the decisions that you've made. Okay? You might be where you are. If you were to do an honest, no kidding assessment of your life, you might find out, well, yeah, I'm laying in bed suffering with this emphysema because I smoke 3 packs a day. Right? But it might be because, like Job, God is proving a point. He may be proving it to you. He may be proving it to those who are watching you, watching around you. Okay? So we have to remember not to blame God, but to trust God, especially when we're in the middle of a trial. And there is no tougher time to trust in God than when you're in the middle of a trial. I mean, it's easy to trust Him when you hit the $1 million lottery, right? But it's when you don't know where your next meal is coming from, that's when the trust gets really tough.
See, but human nature, we say that we trust God when we hit the lottery. But is it God that we trust when we hit the lottery? I think not. I think we want to praise Him when we hit the lottery. When's the last time somebody praised God for a trial that they were going through?
Right.
Job said after he lost everything that he had except for his wife and all those friends that knew exactly why he was going through that trial.
Right.
The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
And think about this. Job lost everything. How can I put this? Job lost everything that was positive and supportive in his life.
Yeah.
The only thing he was left with
Negativity.
was the negative side.
A wife that told him to curse God and die. Friends that knew exactly what was wrong with it.
That you have committed some sin and won't admit it. Fess up.
And then all 5 of them got told by the youngest one in the crowd. They were just sitting back and listening to everybody.
Right. He was the only true friend.
He was the only true friend because he spoke truth in love.
Right.
And that's where Jesus actually, when he said, speak the truth in love,
right,
he was referencing what this young man told Job.
Right. And what he told Job was basically, you have no standing to question God. God is sovereign. He does what's right and what's best. And it's our job to simply praise Him and have faith in Him.
And trust the plan.
And trust the plan.
That's right.
And what I always liked about the story of Job was God is not... So even if you find yourself in the moment and you begin to question God, why me? I don't understand. God is not offended. Okay? This is difficult for everybody to understand. God is not offended by this. Right? It doesn't offend Him for you to come to Him and ask why. Sometimes we ask it insolently. Sometimes we ask it reverently. But we ask it.
But you must be prepared for the response that you get from God when you ask the why.
When Job asked the question of God, right? Why? Well, actually, Job accused God of making a mistake.
Yeah.
Right? But God was still not offended by this. And Job basically had cried, if I could face you face to face, I could show you your mistakes. Now that's a lot of paraphrasing because there's a lot of chapter of Job because we studied it for
9 months.
and we didn't read every verse, right? We had to. That's right, full term. But at the end of the chapter, God grants Job's demand.
Yeah.
He shows up and says, Job, here I am. What do you have to say to me? Right? And he didn't show up as God.
Showed up as a friend.
Yea, verily, grovel before me, and strike lightning and thunder and just prove his power. He showed up. Job realized who he was, fell on his face, and God said what? Get up,
face me.
Face me, because when God created Adam, he created Adam to face him.
Face relationship. Yep.
I want relationship with you. I don't want you, it's fine. We show reverence and obedience to go down there. And as soon as we do, God gets us right back up. He says, okay, that's great. I love that your heart is right. Now get up and face me and let us
commune with one another.
Commune. Let us reason together.
Yep.
Let me hear your argument. Be willing to listen to mine. You ever get into an argument with God? Be prepared to lose.
Because he listened to Job and he said, okay,
Now,
where were you when I flung the stars into the heavens?
right. And
Where were you when I told the oceans you can go no further than this?
basically what he said was, Job, your experience is so limited, you don't have a clue. Right? It's like when my children were little. There's a check in the checkbook, Daddy. You have money. No, that's not the way that works. You have such little experience, child. You do not understand the economy, and that I have to go to work for 40 hours to get money to put in the bank so that I can write that check so they don't come take me. That's all beyond them.
So your kids didn't have a redneck daddy. If they'd been a redneck, you'd paid the whole thing off.
Okay. So finally, in this next verse here, verse 8, let me read it again. To acquire wisdom is to love oneself. People who cherish understanding will prosper. Now, I found that to be quite enlightening. To acquire wisdom is to love oneself. But here we're not talking about education. People say, "Oh, okay, that's education." It's not general education. The whole point and purpose of Proverbs, if you will remember, is to increase our understanding of God. Okay, y'all remember that? Proverbs, the study of Proverbs, if you go back to chapter 1, verse 4, it was to provide insight. Okay? Proverbs is to give us insight. Insight into what? The spiritual insight is the spiritual quality that enables a person to appreciate God's mind and will in matters of behavior, truth, and providence, especially where right perception is not obvious. Insight is akin to wisdom and understanding. It is given by God and is to be sought by believers. Insight into God's plan, okay? It also, a study of these Proverbs would provide us knowledge. And knowledge is defined as the understanding or wisdom, but with a focus on the moral qualities and their application. Right? Knowledge on when to do the right thing, how to do the right thing. What is the right? Have you ever been in a situation where you weren't sure what the right thing was to do?
Yep.
There was some ambiguity there, right? The knowledge that we are given in the study of God's Word helps us to understand that, okay? And finally, the study of Proverbs gives us discernment. And that's the ability to make proper decisions, basically to see right from wrong. Right? A lot of people don't make the right decision because they can't tell the difference between right and wrong. Now, we always can tell the difference between the big rights and the big wrongs. Right? Right, big wrong. But it's the little rights and the little wrongs. Because what we've been learning in Proverbs, it's just as bad to send an innocent man or a righteous man to jail is as it is just to let a guilty man walk free. In God's eyes, there is no difference. And that is also brought to bear for us in that God sees sin as sin. One is as bad as the other. We give them ranking, right? You remember when Jesus talked about praying for forgiveness? He said there were two men. Remember in the New Testament? He said there were two men. One man said, I thank you, God, that I am a faithful man, a righteous man, and I'm not like that poor sinner over there, that I pay tithes, that I go to church, that I'm a fine, upstanding man, that you have made me a good man. Thank you. You're, oh, okay. And the sinner that he referred to wouldn't even lift his eyes to heaven and just said, God, forgive me. I am a sinful man. I'm not worthy to even call your name. And God said he was the sinner that went home justified, not the man who first prayed, right? And so the point there is that what we're learning is we rank sin. God does not. We want to say, well, at least I'm better than that sinner. I'm better than that murderer. I'm better than that pedophile. I'm better than that shoplifter. I'm better than that drug addict. I'm better than that speeder. I'm better than that liar. I'm better than that adulterer. But God just sees it all as the same. We're not going to get to heaven and he's going to go, well, I mean, all you ever did was tell a little white lie, so you're only going to go to the first hell. Now, this guy over here, not only did he kill people, but he ate them. Right? He goes.
Hell. He's going to hell.
Yeah, he's going to hell. No, just one hell, everybody goes. You'll be, if all you ever did was tell little white lies, you never accepted Christ, you will be right next to the pedophile, murdering, cannibal.
Boogerhead.
Right, him too. Yeah. Right. So we got to learn, in God's eyes, sin is sin. It's all bad. It's all on the other side of the line. Doesn't matter whether you got your toes over the line or you are so far out there you need a map to get back. Okay? Okay, so geez, I did that again. All right, there we go. So verses 11 and 16. Now, the 11 and 16 are pretty self-explanatory. Sensible people control their temper. They earn respect by overlooking wrongs. Keep the commandments and keep your life. Despising them leads to death. Now, sensible people control their temper. There was a little editorial coughing there. So what does that mean? That means that when we lose our temper, we do stupid stuff.
Now he gets it.
She apparently loses it.
Amen, brother.
So I was just going to say that coughing you heard was just an amen in a different form.
Yeah.
So how many times? Don't show any hands because I don't want to know. How many times have you lost your temper and said something, and then?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna quit. How many times have you lost your temper and said something, and then wished you hadn't said it? Wished you could take it back, or done something.
All the time.
Wished you like, oh my God.
All the time.
People who have sense. Are you raising her hand?
Everybody in this room should be raising their hand.
Yes. That's right.
And then this one, they earn respect by overlooking wrongdoings. Oh my gosh. Do you know what that means? If you had to put that into simple terms for today's generation, what would you say? What you would say is simply this. Never, ever say, I told you so. Overlooking wrongdoing. Forgiving without being asked, without even any restitution being made. Right? So I have just a little sidebar, a little personal information on me. Especially at work, I have to be very careful because I have a very sarcastic nature.
No.
No.
Oh, no, tell us it ain't true.
I'm sorry, it's true. And I will tell people things, and they will say that I don't know what I'm talking about, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is, and it happens and it comes apart and the wheels come off of the bus. I like to be in the room and go, gee, if only someone would have told. Oh, wait. But you know what that is? I told you so. Right? And I'm getting better as I'm getting older, right? And now,
Wisdom.
and Travis back there going, no, I'm not.
Not even close.
I'm getting better as I'm getting older because I'm learning to say, when somebody says, how did we get here? I'm learning to say, it doesn't matter. It's how we move forward now that matters, right? And I'm learning that I get more respect for that than for being right. I know that's a crazy thought, right? It's a crazy thought. But if you're like me, being right, that's just something that comes natural. But respect comes from overlooking the wrongs, not from being right. Okay? Keep the commandment. I'm going to ignore that. Keep the commandments. Keep your life. Despising them leads to death. Right? And this is more than just the 10 commandments. This is honor your mother and father, right? What did they tell you? Don't play in the freeway. Don't play out in the street.
Don't run with scissors.
Don't run with scissors.
Classic.
Right? Classic. But don't play with a BB gun. You'll put out an eye.
Shoot your
Okay?
Don't play with machetes.
Don't play with machetes. Right.
Just yesterday.
Okay. So verse 19, which is hot-tempered people must pay the penalty. If you rescue them once, you will have to do it again. Okay? We see this admonition about hot-tempered people, but unlike the previous verses that we've read about people who lose their temper or anger, this one isn't directed at the person with the temper. It's directed at the bystander, right? If you bail out the mistake the hot-tempered person makes, right, then it's going to be your problem. You're going to have to do it again. They don't learn, and you're going to have to do it again. Some of us only learn
The hard way.
I make mistakes.
the hard way,
Yep.
right? Okay, so that brick wall is not going to come down because I run my head into it. Okay? That's not going to happen. And so we have to learn that sometimes we have to allow the penalty to kick in, right? And that's what it's talking about there. Now, verses 20, 21, 23. So the next several verses, again, they're pretty self-explanatory. Let me read them. Get all the advice and instruction you can so you will be wise the rest of your life. Now remember, he who looks for wisdom loves himself. Look for all of it you can. I tell guys at work all the time, if the company or someone comes and offers you education,
Take it.
take it.
Yes.
Because once you have brought that knowledge into your mind, into your heart, they can't reach in and take it back. They can't say, hey, we're going to fire you. Give us back what you learned. Right? That can't happen.
It's yours forever.
So it's yours forever, right? This is kind of the same thing. Get all the advice and instruction you can. If you're contemplating doing something, don't be bashful. Ask questions. Don't be afraid of opposing answers. Right? If you want to say, I want to go into candle making, right? What do you think? And somebody might go, well, do you know anything about candle making? Well, no, I don't. Well, I don't think that's a very good idea, right? You say, well, I'm not going to take your advice. I'm going to go find somebody that says, I think you ought to do it. I think you'd be great. Well, the first response you got had a very good point.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about making candles? No. It may not be a good idea for you to go that way, at least until you've gotten more instructions, okay? You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail, verse 21. So there's an old Jewish rabbi. Would you be a rabbi if you weren't Jewish? Yeah. There's an old rabbi, and he said, they asked him one time, what's the will of God like? And he said, the will of God is like a river, like a big, wide, swift river. And they said, how do you mean? He says, you get into the river, and no matter what you choose to do, swim across, swim upstream, swim downstream, you're going to go where the river takes you. If you swim upstream, it's going to make you tired, but you're still going to be going with the current, right? God's will is like that. No matter what plan you make, you're going to end up where God wants you. We see that all the time in the Old Testament. We see those kinds of examples. You know, the non-faithful, non-believing person ends up doing exactly what God needed them. They think they're getting revenge, or they think they're being mean, and they're really doing exactly what God wanted them to do in the first place. Okay? Let's see, verse 21. Verse 23. Fear of the Lord leads to life, bringing security and protection from harm. Fear of the Lord there means respect and honor. If we respect and honor God, this is going to lead to protection. Now, again, understand that in the physical life, in the physical world, we will have trials and tribulations. There will be troubles. God will test us, right? But we will always be protected. What is the number one ultimate protection that God provides us?
Salvation.
Bingo. Way to go.
Finally.
Gold star.
Check plus.
That's right. Great answer. Great answer.
Would you like to congratulate?
He didn't hear you.
He didn't hear you. So,
No comments from the peanut gallery.
salvation. It's exactly right, though. Salvation. That is your ultimate protection. Even if you die here, you enter into heaven. God has fulfilled His promise to give you protection. Okay? I have been in arguments with people who refuse to believe God exists. Right? They've cursed me. They've called me names, like stupid and naive, etc. And one day, I will see their face as they are confronted with the truth. Right? Hopefully, I see their face long before that, and they say, hey, I finally did come to realize you were right, and I'm up here with you, brother. But one day, I will see their face. They will be confronted by the truth, and that will not be a thing of pleasure, because their soul will be damned forever, right? And so, that's why it says, fear of the Lord leads to life, brings security and protection from harm. Now, verse 25, if you punish a mocker, the simple-minded will learn a lesson. Right? And we've all done that. We've all looked at somebody and said, well, I ain't going to do that. Right? But the wise, when the wise are corrected, they become even wiser. Okay? There's a difference between simply learning what not to do because it hurts and learning the whys and the hows and understanding the issues that go into that, right? Let me see if I can do it this way. So, in the Revolutionary War, George Washington looked at his troops and realized he did not have an army. He had a collection of farmers, right? They had a lot of heart, and he was going to need that, but he also needed them to be an army. And so he hired a French military man, I forget his rank. I think he was a major or colonel, something along in there. But anyway, and he brought him in to teach his professional soldiers soldiering. So the first thing that the guy did was he taught them to drill, all that kind of stuff. But while they were training, he said, we have to dig latrines. And they said, what? He said, you have to dig latrines. If you don't dig latrines, you're going to be sick, right? Dysentery. And when you dig your latrines, do not dig them upstream. Dig them downstream of the camp. And he couldn't get anybody to listen to him. So he went out one evening during the meal, and he began to explain to them. He said, so look at your food. He said, do you see that fly? He said, that fly, you know where that fly has been? That fly has been on that open cesspit that you call a latrine. And where is that? That's upwind of you, right? And so that fly, not a very strong flyer, so when he's up there chewing on whatever, he takes wing and the wind brings him down here and he lands on your food. You eat it. And for the next 5 days, you don't eat anything. And sure enough, several guys got sick, throwing their guts up. And all of a sudden, those guys started digging latrines. They followed orders after that. And the French military man, he told Washington, he said, they will do this now for the rest of their lives. Because they understand why you've given the order. And he said, a soldier who understands why will follow those orders more fully and more completely than one who is simply doing what you said. Because he understands. And that's what this talks about. The wise, if you correct the wise, they will be all the wiser. Finally, he said, if you stop listening to instruction, my child, you will turn your back on knowledge. And taken in context with the first one, if you love yourself, you will go after wisdom. If you quit learning, what you're really doing is turning your back on yourself. Okay? And that's what that means. Now, I added into this section chapter 20, verses 1 and 3. Wine produces mockers. Alcohol leads to brawls. Those led astray by drink cannot be wise. Avoiding a fight is a mark of honor. Only fools insist on quarreling. And so I did that because of the word wise in verse 1 and the reference to fools in verse 3. I found it interesting that once I had done this, that those two verses immediately followed the one that I just read to you about stopping listening to instruction, turning your back on knowledge, and then suddenly wine produces mockers, alcohol leads to brawls. The person who quits learning turns to other substances to fill the void. Okay? And they begin to fill up on these things, and we see mocking, brawling, quarreling, fighting, all of these things come as a result. And we got one more to go through. I'm going to stop right there, though. Justice is the next one. That'll be the final set of verses that we study. So,